Stop right there. Don't move.
I'm Darnell Mensah, County Registrar of Voters. This is my polling station.
I didn't ask who you are. I asked for proof of citizenship. Now.
My credentials are in my vehicle,
No.
10 feet away. Let
No,
me get
do
it.
not move toward that vehicle.
A black man walks toward a polling station on Election Day. His name is on the sign above the door. His credentials are on the passenger seat of his vehicle 10 feet behind him. An ICE agent stops him in the parking lot and demands federal citizenship documentation. The credentials stay on the seat for 26 minutes. The voters watch from the line. The body camera watches from Cable's chest. The sign watches from above the door. Darnell Mensah is 51 years old. He is the elected county registrar of voters elected 3 years ago, re-elected 14 months before this election day, with 67% of the vote. He has administered 4 county elections. He is the official responsible for certifying the citizenship eligibility of every voter in the county. On the morning of November 5th, he is scheduled to visit 6 polling stations before noon to oversee opening procedures. Westside Community Polling Station is the first. He arrives at 7:12 a.m. He parks. His credentials folder is on the passenger seat. He is 3 steps from the entrance when Cable intercepts him. Agent Frank Cable is 38 years old, 9 years with ICE, 4 prior complaints involving Black and Latino individuals during voter registration drives and election-adjacent activities. All 4 resolved internally. No sustained findings, no pattern review, no operational restriction. He is conducting what his incident report will describe as a routine citizenship verification operation in the vicinity of a public facility. He approaches Registrar Mensah at 7:15 a.m. He does not look at the sign above the door. He does not look at the vehicle 10 feet away. He does not cross-reference the county election registry accessible from the device on his belt. He looks at the man. He makes a decision. The body camera records the decision and everything the decision costs from the moment it is made. James Webb is 44 years old, assigned federal election observer for Westside Community Polling Station. He comes to the entrance at 7:17 a.m. and watches for 2 minutes before going back inside to file his report. He files it at 7:44 a.m., 3 minutes after Mensah is released, while Cable is still in the parking lot. The report triggers a Department of Justice Election Protection Unit investigation before the morning is over. Type 26 minutes. If you understand what it means that the credentials were 10 feet away the entire time, and the sign was above the door the entire time, and the body camera was running the entire time. Darnell Mensah was raised in this county by a father who drove a school bus for 31 years and a mother who worked as a county clerk in the Election Commission office for 24 of them, sitting at the desk where provisional ballots were processed, where voter rolls were updated, where the machinery of democratic participation was maintained one form at a time by people whose names appeared nowhere on the ballot, but without whom the ballot would not have been possible. His mother taught him, by practice rather than instruction, that the administration of elections is not a bureaucratic function, but a civic one, that the integrity of the process is the integrity of the democracy, and that the integrity of the process depends on the people who show up before. The voters do and stay after they leave and make sure every vote is counted correctly. He spent 12 years in county government before running for registrar, first as an elections clerk, then as deputy registrar under the previous office holder, learning every dimension of the office from the inside before he sought it from the outside. He was elected 3 years ago on a platform of expanded voter access, modernized registration infrastructure, and the specific and documented commitment to ensuring that no eligible voter in the county was turned away from the process due to an administrative failure on the county's part. He won with 61% of the vote. He was re-elected 14 months before Election Day with 67%. The increase was the largest margin improvement for an incumbent registrar in the county's history. He administers elections the way his mother processed provisional ballots, one form at a time, one station at a time, with the specific and unhurried attention of someone who understands that the process is only as reliable as the care brought to each of its smallest components. On Election Day, he visits 6 polling stations before noon. He has done this for every election he has administered. He leaves his house at 5:30 a.m. He reviews his station list over coffee. He loads the credentials folder into the vehicle. He drives to Westside Community Polling Station. He parks at 7:12 a.m. He is 3 steps from the entrance at 7:15 a.m. when Cable intercepts him, and from that moment forward, he conducts himself with the specific and deliberate steadiness of a man who knows the body camera is running and knows that the body camera is the most important election official in the parking lot right now, and that what the body camera needs from him is clarity and nothing else. Frank Cable has been with ICE for 9 years. He joined at 29, drawn to federal enforcement by what he describes in his personnel file as a commitment to border integrity and citizenship verification. He has worked election-adjacent operations for 3 of his 9 years operations conducted in the vicinity of polling stations, voter registration drives, and election commission offices on the theory, disputed by the Department of Justice's own guidelines on Election Day federal law enforcement activity, that such locations represent productive environments for citizenship verification stops. His 4 prior complaints are all from these operations. David Asante, stopped outside a voter registration drive, detained for 18 minutes, credentials dismissed. Maria Cole, stopped outside an early voting location, detained for 22 minutes, credentials dismissed. Emmanuel Obi, stopped at a polling station parking lot during a primary election, detained for 31 minutes, credentials dismissed. Raymond Webb, stopped outside the County Election Commission office during a registration event, detained for 14 minutes, credentials dismissed. 4 complaints, 4 Black or Latino individuals, 4 election-adjacent locations, 4 internal resolutions, no pattern review, no operational restriction, no requirement to cross-reference the election registry before approaching an individual at a polling location. At 7:14 a.m. on November 5th, he is in the parking lot of Westside Community Polling Station. He sees a black man in a dark jacket exit a vehicle and walk toward the polling station entrance. He moves toward him. He does not look at the sign above the entrance Westside Community Polling Station, Darnell Mensah, County Registrar of Voters, which has been posted since 6 a.m. and which is visible from every point in the parking lot in the morning light of a November election day. He does not access the county election registry on his belt device, which would have returned Darnell Mensah's name, title, photograph, and official election day schedule in under 30 seconds. He approaches. He stops the man. He demands federal citizenship documentation. He prevents him from reaching his vehicle. He stands in a parking lot for 26 minutes, while the sign above the door says everything the phone call will eventually confirm, and the body camera on his chest records the sign and the vehicle and the credentials folder through the window and the voters in line, and all of it, from the first frame to the last, with the same precision and the same indifference to what it is supposed to record. Cable's body camera records 29 minutes and 7 seconds between its activation at 7:15 and 2 seconds a.m., and its deactivation at 7:44 and 9 seconds a.m. Dre's camera records the same sequence from 8 feet to the right. Together they capture the following. 7:15 and 2 seconds a.m. Camera activates. Parking lot. The sign above the entrance visible in the frame. Darnell Mensah, County Registrar of Voters. The vehicle 10 feet to the left. The manila folder on the passenger seat visible through the window. 7:15 and 31 seconds. A.M. Cable intercepts Mensah, 3 steps from the entrance. The sign is in the frame over Mensah's left shoulder for every subsequent frame of the detention. 7:15 and 58 seconds. A.M. Mensah turns toward his vehicle. Cable tells him not to approach it. The body camera captures Mensah's hand, the direction he was turning, and the vehicle 10 feet away, and the credentials folder on the seat. 7:17 and 11 seconds. A.M. James Webb in the entrance doorway. The body camera captures him looking at Mensah. It captures him going back inside. 7:17 and 34 seconds. A.M. 3 voters, with phones out in the morning line. The body camera captures them people standing in line to vote, watching the county registrar detained in his own polling station's parking lot. 7:31 and 9 seconds. A.M. Patricia Okafor arrives. Her exchange with Cable runs 41 seconds on the audio track. She points at the sign. She says, "His name is on the building." The body camera records her pointing. It records the sign. It records Cable not looking at the sign. 7:32 and 4 seconds. A.M. Cable dials. The 9-minute call begins. The body camera records Mensah standing in the parking lot sign above the door, credentials 10 feet away, deputy director beside him, voters in line behind him while the call runs. 7:40 and 51 seconds, AM call ends. Mensah is released. 7:41 and 17 seconds. AM Mensah retrieves the credentials folder. He opens it. He holds out the badge and the ID. The body camera captures both documents from 2 feet. It captures Cable's face for 3 seconds. The jury will watch those 3 seconds on day 1. The courtroom will not make a sound. 7:44 and 9 seconds AM. Camera deactivates. The sign is the last thing in the frame before it goes dark. Patricia Okafor has administered county elections for 22 years. She has seen polling station disruptions, equipment failures, staffing gaps, weather events, procedural challenges. She has never, in 22 years, received a call at 7:18 a.m. on Election Day telling her that the county registrar of voters has been detained by federal agents in the parking lot of a polling station while voters are in line. She is in her vehicle and moving before the polling station judge has finished the sentence. She arrives at 7:31 and 9 seconds a.m. She does not slow down when she sees the situation. She walks directly to Cable, and she speaks to him with the specific and practiced authority of a person who has spent 22 years ensuring that nothing, not equipment, not weather, not administrative failure, disrupts the administration of an election, and who has now added federal agents to the list of things that will not be permitted to disrupt it on her watch. She points at the sign. She says, "His name is on the building." She says it once. The body camera records her saying it, and records Cable not looking at the sign, and records the sign itself. Still there above the door, Darnell Mensah's name in black lettering on white, as it has been since 6:00 a.m., and as it will be until the polls close at 8 p.m. She tells Cable to make the call. He makes it. She stands beside Mensah for the 9 minutes. She does not speak again during those 9 minutes. She counts them. She will recount them, precisely and without embellishment, from the witness stand 14 months later, and the courtroom will be completely still for the counting. James Webb files his Federal Observer Report at 7:44 a.m. It is 3 pages. It documents the detention from 7:17 a.m., the moment he came to the entrance, to 7:41 a.m., when Mensah was released. It documents the voters with phones in the line. It documents the 11 voters who left the line during the detention period. It documents the 7 of those 11 who did not return before Webb filed his report. It is time-stamped, signed, and transmitted to the Department of Justice Election Protection Unit before Cable has left the parking lot. The DOJ investigation opens the same morning. It runs parallel to the civil case for 14 months. Its findings, submitted to Congress 4 months after the civil verdict, document the following. 17 voters observed the detention from the line at Westside Community Polling Station between 7:15 a.m. and 7:41 a.m. 11 left the line during the detention. 7 did not return to vote at that station on Election Day. The investigation cannot determine with certainty whether those 7 voters cast ballots elsewhere or did not vote at all. It can determine, with the precision of a federal investigation that has the body camera footage and the observer report and the line records, that 7 voters who were present at a polling station on Election Day left that station during a 26-minute period in which the elected official responsible for their access to the democratic process was detained in the parking lot by a federal agent who did not look at the sign above the door. The bill incorporating the Mensah standard as federal law is introduced in Congress 90 days after the verdict. It has 14 co-sponsors on the day of introduction. It is the first federal election protection bill introduced in response to a single civil rights verdict in 11 years. Mensah meets with Caldwell on November 8, 3 days after the election. He arrives with a folder, a different folder from the one on the passenger seat, though it contains a copy of everything that was in that one. The folder also contains Cable's body camera footage downloaded from the Federal Evidence Management System under a records request filed the morning of November 6th, Dre's body camera footage from the same request, James Webb's 3-page observer report, time-stamped 7:44 a.m., Patricia Okafor's preliminary written account, 4 pages, Dated November 5th. The 4 prior complaint files obtained through a Freedom of Information request filed simultaneously, and a 1-page timeline covering 7:12 a.m. to 7:44 a.m. on November 5th, written by Mensah himself the evening of Election Day after his 6th station visit, in the format he uses to document every Election Day anomaly. He places the observer report on top. He tells Caldwell, 7 voters left the line and did not come back. He says, I do not know if they voted somewhere else or did not vote at all. He says, I know they were there, and then they were not there. And the reason they were not there is in the body camera footage. He says, I want that in the record, whether or not it is in the damages. Caldwell writes it down. He tells her he wants 4 things. Personal damages for 26 minutes in a parking lot on Election Day, while his name was on the sign above the door. Institutional damages for the absence of an election registry cross-reference protocol that would have identified him in 30 seconds. Personal accountability for Cable, whose 4 prior complaints in election-adjacent contexts establish a pattern the body camera of November 5th documents for the 5th time. And the Mensah Standard Mandatory Election Registry cross-reference for all ICE operations within 500 feet of any polling station on any election day embedded in federal law, not just ICE operational policy, because operational policy can be changed by a memo, and federal law requires an act of Congress, and Mensah wants this one to require an act of Congress. Mensah visits 5 more polling stations between 8:09 a.m. and 11:47 a.m. on November 5th. He is 41 minutes behind schedule when he leaves West Side. He makes up 18 minutes across the remaining visits by shortening his time at each station without shortening his attention to each one. He checks every station the way he always checks them. The equipment, the staffing, the line management, the provisional ballot process, with the specific and unhurried care of someone who understands that the integrity of the process is the integrity of the democracy, and that the integrity of the process does not take the morning off because of what happened in the West Side parking lot. He does not tell the staff at the other 5 stations what happened at West Side. He does his job. He comes home at 9:14 p.m. when the last polls close and the count begins. He sits at his desk and he writes the 1-page timeline. He writes it the way his mother processed provisional ballots, one detail at a time, in sequence, precisely. He dates it November 5th. He puts it in a folder. He calls Renee Caldwell's office the following morning. The body camera footage is Exhibit A, 29 minutes and 7 seconds. The sign above the door in the first frame and the last. The vehicle 10 feet away, the credentials folder on the passenger seat visible through the window, the hand turning toward the vehicle at 7:15 and 58 seconds, a.m. and Cable telling it to stop. The voters with phones at 7:17 and 34 seconds, a.m., Patricia Okafor pointing at the sign at 7:31 and 22 seconds, a.m. Cable, not looking at the sign. The 9-minute call. The badge and the ID held out at 7:41 and 17 seconds, a.m. Cable's face for 3 seconds. The sign above the door as the camera deactivates. The jury watches the full relevant portion on day 1. They watch the sign from the first frame. They watch it from the last. They count 26 minutes between those 2 frames, and they carry that number into every subsequent piece of testimony. The County Election Registry record is Exhibit B. Darnell Mensah, County Registrar of Voters. Photograph, Official Election Day Schedule. Westside Community Polling Station. 7:15 a.m. arrival, listed as the first of 6 stations. Accessible from the device on Cable's belt in under 30 seconds. Placed beside the body camera timestamp of 7:15 and 2 seconds, a.m. the moment Cable's camera activated, and the fact, established in Cable's own deposition, that the registry was not accessed at any point during the 26-minute detention. The 4 prior complaint files are Exhibit C, David Asante, Maria Cole, Emmanuel Obi, Raymond Webb, 4 election-adjacent stops, 4 Black or Latino individuals, 4 internal resolutions, placed beside the body camera footage of 7:15 and 2 seconds a.m., and the statistical analysis showing Cable's rate of stopping Black and Latino individuals at election-adjacent locations at 8.4 times the rate of white individuals in equivalent operational contexts. James Webb's Observer Report is Exhibit D, 3 pages, time-stamped 7:44 a.m. 17 voters observed the detention. 11 left the line. 7 did not return. Filed while Cable was still in the parking lot. Triggered a federal investigation before the morning was over. Placed beside the body camera footage of 7:17 and 34 seconds a.m. the 3 voters with phones, the line behind them, the detained registrar in front of them, and the question of what a polling station line means when the person responsible for every voter on it is detained in the parking lot while it forms. Caldwell deposes Cable 9 months after the incident. She asks him to describe what he observed at 7:14 a.m. on November 5th that led him to approach the individual. He says he observed a subject whose appearance and behavior were consistent with his operational criteria for a citizenship verification stop. She asks him to describe the criteria. He describes them in terms that apply to any black man walking toward any public building. She places the body camera still from 7:15 and 2 seconds a.m. on the table. Mensah, 3 steps from the entrance, the sign above the door, the vehicle 10 feet to the left, no behavior visible, that the criteria he has described would not apply to every other person in the parking lot. She asks him to identify the specific behavior that triggered the approach. He does not answer directly. She asks whether he read the sign above the entrance before approaching. He is quiet for 11 seconds. He says, "I was focused on the subject." She asks whether the sign was visible from his position in the parking lot. He says, "Yes." She asks what the sign said. He reads it from the body camera still she places in front of him. Darnell Mensah, County Registrar of Voters. She asks whether he accessed the county election registry before approaching. He says, "No." She asks how long that check would have taken. He says, 30 seconds. She places the observer report on the table. She asks him to read the line documenting voters who left the line during the detention. He reads it. She asks him to read the number who did not return. He reads 7. She closes her folder. The 11-second silence from the question about the sign is the last thing she plays to the jury in her closing argument. 11 seconds of a federal agent sitting in silence after being asked whether he read the name on the sign above the door of the building he was preventing the man whose name was on it from entering. She sits down. The civil jury deliberates for 2 days and 2 hours, $29.7 million, unanimous on all counts. $10.4 million to Registrar Darnell Mensah for unlawful detention, racial profiling, interference with an elected official's performance of his constitutional duties on Election Day, and the specific and documented harm of being prevented from accessing credentials that were 10 feet away for 26 minutes while voters watched from the line, and his name was on the sign, above the door, and the body camera recorded, all of it from the first frame to the last. $11.2 million in institutional damages funding. The Mensah standard, the mandatory cross-reference requirement for all ICE operations within 500 feet of any polling station or election facility on any election day, primary, or voter registration event, requiring registry verification before any physical stop, and a maximum 30-second verification window before any stop must be escalated to a supervisor. $8.1 million in punitive damages against ICE and DHS, jointly for 4 prior complaints. No pattern review, no operational restriction, and the documented electoral disruption of 7 voters at a polling station on Election Day, produced by a stop that a 30-second registry check would have prevented before the first word was spoken. Cable is terminated and convicted on all counts. He is sentenced to 3 years in federal prison. Dre receives a formal reprimand and mandatory training. The Mensah standard is adopted by ICE within 60 days and introduced as federal legislation within 90 days of the verdict. The bill has 14 co-sponsors on the day of introduction. It is the first federal election protection bill introduced in direct response to a civil rights verdict in 11 years. Mensah's name is on the bill. It is in the congressional record. It will be there after every other consequence in this case has been resolved. The DOJ investigation cannot determine with certainty whether the 7 voters who left the West Side line during the detention and did not return cast ballots elsewhere or did not vote at all, What it can determine is that they were there and then they were not there, and the reason they were not there is in the body camera footage and the observer report and the parking lot of Westside Community Polling Station at 7:15 a.m. on a Tuesday in November. The investigation documents this with the precision of a federal process that understands the difference between what can be proven and what can be documented, and it documents what can be documented because the documented record is what the bill is built on, and the bill is what changes the next parking lot before it becomes the next 26 minutes. Mensah is asked, in an interview published 6 weeks after the verdict, whether he thinks about those 7 voters. He says, "I think about them every day." He says, "I do not know if they voted. I know they were in the line, and then they were not." He says, "My job is to make sure that does not happen. My job is to make sure every eligible voter in this county has access to the process." He pauses. He says, "I was in the parking lot for 26 minutes. I could not do my job for 26 minutes." He says, "The standard exists so that the next registrar can do their job." He says, "That is what the 26 minutes are for now." $29.7 million. 3 years in federal prison. A named standard in federal legislation. A DOJ investigation in the congressional record, 14 co-sponsors. A formal reprimand for the agent who stood 8 feet away and did not intervene. None of it reaches back to 7:15 and 2 seconds a.m. And the moment the body camera activated, and the sign was in the first frame, and the vehicle was 10 feet away, and the decision was already made. None of it restores the 26 minutes, or the 41 minutes of schedule lost, or the 7 voters who were in the line, and then were not. None of it measures what it costs to have spent 3 years building the infrastructure of democratic participation in a county, and to have that infrastructure reduced, on Election Day, to a sign above a door that an agent did not read, and a folder on a passenger seat that he would not allow to be opened. The Mensah standard means the next agent in the next parking lot runs a 30-second check before he takes a step toward an election official. The mandatory 500-foot protocol means the next polling station is a protected perimeter before it is a detention location. The federal legislation means the next stop requires an act of Congress to undo, rather than a memo to reverse. The standard does not restore the 26 minutes. It changes what the next 26 minutes cost before they begin. Westside Community Polling Station opens at 6 a.m. on the next election day. The sign above the door reads the same Darnell Mensah, County Registrar of Voters. He arrives at 7:12 a.m. He parks in the same lot. He takes the credentials folder from the passenger seat. He walks to the entrance. The sign is above him. He goes inside. He has 5 more stations to visit before noon. He is on schedule. At 7:15 and 2 seconds a.m., the body camera activated, and the sign was in the first frame. At 7:15 and 31 seconds a.m., the elected county registrar of voters was stopped in the parking lot of his own polling station and told to prove his citizenship. At 7:15 and 58 seconds a.m., he turned toward his vehicle and was told not to approach it. His credentials were 10 feet away. The sign was above the door. The voters were in the line. At 7:31 and 9 seconds a.m., a deputy director pointed at the sign and said his name is on the building. At 7:32 and 4 seconds a.m., a phone call began that took 9 minutes to confirm what the sign had been saying since 6 a.m. At 7:40 and 51 seconds a.m., he was released. At 7:41 and 17 seconds a.m., he held out the badge and the ID that had been 10 feet away for 26 minutes. At 7:44 and 9 seconds a.m., the body camera deactivated. The sign was the last thing in the frame. 7 voters had left the line. The credentials folder was in his hand. He had 5 more stations to visit. He was 41 minutes behind schedule. So here is my question. If a black elected official can be detained in the parking lot of his own polling station on Election Day, while his name is on the sign above the door and his credentials are on the passenger seat of his vehicle 10 feet away, and the decadity promised, election registry on the detaining agent's belt device would have identified him in 30 seconds. What does that tell us about which elections this system treats as worth protecting and which officials it treats as worth verifying before the first word is spoken? Should the Mensah Standard's 500-foot protection zone be extended to 1,000 feet? Given that the chilling effect on voter participation, documented in the Observer Report, begins not at the entrance to the polling station, but at the site of a federal detention in the parking lot. And should an elected official's detention within the jurisdiction of their own office, on the day that office exists to administer, be treated as a per se violation of the constitutional right to hold and exercise public office, making the detention automatically criminal, rather than subject to civil remedy alone? Share your thoughts in the comments. This story is not about one agent who did not read a sign. It is about a body camera that recorded 29 minutes and 7 seconds of what it costs to be the elected guardian of the democratic process in a county and to be detained in a parking lot on election day, while the process you are responsible for runs without you and the voters you are responsible for watch from the line, and the sign with your name on it is in every frame from the first to the last. It is about a credentials folder on a passenger seat 10 feet away for 26 minutes. It is about 7 voters who were in the line and then were not. It is about Patricia Okafor pointing at a sign and a man who did not look at it. It is about James Webb filing a report at 7:44 a.m. and 14 co-sponsors and a bill in the congressional record and a standard named for the man whose name was already on the door. The body camera activated at 7:15 and 2 seconds a.m. The sign was in the first frame. The credentials were 10 feet away. The registry check would have taken 30 seconds. The standard is in the legislation. The name is on the bill. Registrar Mensah arrives at 7:12 a.m. on the next election day. He parks in the same lot. He walks to the same entrance. The sign is above the door. He goes inside. He is on schedule. That is what the 26 minutes are for now. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next story.